series of clashes. The battles of Khasan were a series of clashes in 1938 between the Imperial Japanese Army and the Red Army over Japan's dispute of territorial claims near Lake Khasan and the Tumannaya River. In Japan, these events were referred to as the incident at Zhanggufeng. In 1932, Japanese troops completed the occupation of Manchuria, where a puppet state called Manchukuo was established. Shortly after that, the situation along the borderline worsened. The area occupied by the Passyet Border Detachment was no exception. In February 1934, 5 Japanese soldiers crossed the borderline, and during a confrontation with border guards, one of the violators was killed, while 4 were wounded and detained. On March 22, during an attempt to scout the area of the Amelianseb border post, an officer and a soldier of the Japanese Army were shot dead. In April 1934, Japanese soldiers attempted to seize the Peakbald, in the sector of the Grodokovo border detachment, while simultaneously attacking the Poltavka border post, but the border guards, with support from an artillery company, repelled the attack and drove the enemy back across the borderline. In July 1934, the Japanese carried out 6 provocations along the borderline. In August 1934 there were 20 provocations, and in September 1934, 47 provocations. In the first 7 months of 1935, there were 24 cases of Japanese aircraft invading Soviet airspace along the border, 33 cases of shelling the territory of the USSR from adjacent territories, and 44 cases of violations of the river border on the Amur River by Manchurian vessels. In the autumn of 1935, 15 kilometers from the Petrovka outpost, a border patrol noticed 2 Japanese who were attempting to connect to the communication line. 1 soldier was killed, and a non-commissioned officer was detained. The violators were found with a rifle and a machine gun. On October 12, a group of Japanese troops attacked the outpost Valinka, and border guard V. Kotelnikov was killed. In November 1935, the plenipotentiary representative of the USSR in Tokyo, K.E.K. Urenev, delivered a note of protest to the Japanese Foreign Minister Hirota regarding violations of the Soviet border by Japanese forces that occurred on October 6, October 8, and October 12, 1935. On January 30, 1936, 2 Japanese Manchu companies crossed the border at Meshcherikovopady and penetrated 1.5 kilometers into Soviet territory before being pushed back by border guards. The casualties amounted to 31 Manchu soldiers and Japanese officers killed, and 23 injured, as well as 4 dead and several wounded Soviet border guards. On November 24, a mounted infantry unit of 60 Japanese crossed the border near Grodokovo but came under machine gun fire and retreated, losing 18 soldiers killed and 7 wounded, with 8 bodies left on Soviet territory. On November 26, 3 Japanese crossed the border and began topographic surveying of the area from the top of Pavlova Hill. During an attempt to detain them from the neighboring territory, machine gun and artillery fire was opened, resulting in the deaths of 3 Soviet border guards. In 1936, at the outpost Kansi, Japanese soldiers captured the height of Malaya Chertova and constructed fortifications there. In May 1937, 2 kilometers from the border patrol again noticed the Japanese attempting to connect to the communication line. A Japanese soldier was shot, 6 reels of field telephone cable were seized, along with wire cutters and 6 pickaxes. On June 5, in the area of responsibility of the 21st Rifle Division of the Red Army, Japanese soldiers invaded Soviet territory and captured a hill near Lake Khanka, but retreated to the adjacent territory as they approached the border of the 63rd Rifle Regiment. The commander of the regiment, Ir Dobish, who was late in moving forces to the borderline, was held accountable for disciplinary actions. On June 30, Japanese troops attacked and sank a Soviet border armored boat on the Amur River. 7 crew members died, and near the village of Ganshaza, they shelled armored boat number 74 and gunboat number 308 of the Amur military flotilla. The commander of the Far East Military District, V.K. Blyakar, raised an alarm and dispatched 1 reconnaissance battalion, 6 infantry battalions, 1 sapper battalion, 3 artillery divisions, and an air squadron of 12 aircraft to the borderline. However, the incident did not escalate further. While the troops were being deployed, the Japanese raised the sunken border boat and took it back to their base, after which they retreated from the borderline. On October 28, 1937, at an altitude of 460.1, the border guard unit of the Pakshikori outpost discovered 2 open trenches surrounded by barbed wire. The trenches opened fire, and in the exchange of gunfire, the senior officer of the unit, Lieutenant Amakalan, was wounded and 2 Japanese soldiers were killed. In March 1938, the Guangdong Army headquarters developed a war plan against the USSR, State Defense Policy, which provided for the use of 18 divisions for the attack on the USSR. On July 15, 1938, a border patrol noticed a group of 5 Japanese individuals on the top of Mount Zaozhernaya, conducting reconnaissance and photographing the area. During an attempt to detain them, Japanese scout Matsushima was shot. He was found to have weapons, binoculars, a camera, and maps of Soviet territory, while the others managed to escape. From 1936 until the beginning of hostilities at Lake Khasan in July 1938, Japanese and Manchurian forces committed a total of 231 violations of the USSR border, with 35 of these resulting in major combat clashes. Of this number, from the beginning of 1938 until the start of the battles at Lake Khasan, there were 124 cases of land border violations and 40 cases of aircraft intrusions into Soviet airspace. According to Ayakashkin, a member of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, during this period, Western powers, including Great Britain and the USA, were interested in escalating the armed conflict between the USSR and Japan in the Far East and transforming the tension into a Soviet-Japanese war. One of the forms of encouraging Japan to go to war against the USSR was supplying Japan's military industry with strategic raw materials, including the supply of goods and fuel for Japan. An example is the fuel supplies from the USA, which continued not only after the beginning of the Japanese offensive in China in the summer of 1937 but also after the start of the battles at Lake Khasan.